Marian Bantjes. Born in 1963 in Canada, Marian Bantjes is one of the most celebrated graphic designers known for her innovative approach to typography and design. Bantjes began her career in graphic design before evolving into a renowned artist, creating works that blend innovative detail with bold, expressive typography. She has become widely recognized for her ability to combine visual storytelling with striking ornamentation, often incorporating hand-drawn elements and meticulous patterns into her pieces. Throughout her career, Bantjes has collaborated with major brands and institutions. Her work spans across various mediums including print, illustration, digital design, and more, earning her recognition as one of the most inventive voices in contemporary design. Her unique style has been showcased in numerous exhibitions, and she has authored books such as I Wonder and Pretty Pictures, which have further cemented her position as one of the most influential figures in the design world. This is Two Stocks with Marian Bantjes. First of all, I would like to thank you. It's a pleasure and honor to have you here at Two Stocks. Welcome.
Thank you. Very nice to be here.
Thank you. I wanted to start this conversation with your introduction to graphic design and the reason that you chose design and the world of graphic design as a path for you. At the very beginning, what was it about design that was appealing to you?
Well, nothing. I fell into graphic design. I didn't study it in school. I got into it because I answered an ad in a bookstore for to work in a publishing company, and it was just to like file magazines and stuff like that. And they ended up it was a publishing slash typesetting company, and they ended up training me for. I started off filing magazines, and then they ended up training me in paste up, and we had a very primitive computer system back then called a copygraphic. Um, and then we got some PCs. We got early PC XTs, and we got a new program for typesetting, and then I got trained on that from the ground up, and so I sort of had a kind of an apprenticeship style training in typesetting, and after doing that for 2 years, a friend and I decided to start a little design firm. And we didn't know what we were doing at all, really. I knew a lot about setting type. I didn't know anything about pre-production for printing, using images, that kind of stuff. I had been very much, yeah, just setting type since, up until that time. But I did have a good sense of typography from, 10 years of there's books, mostly for vast majority was for books and a little bit of magazines. And so anyway, we just threw ourselves into the fire, and it was, sink or swim, and we sort of dog paddled to yeah, survival.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And
And
it was through that process that I became interested in what I was doing. Yeah.
and is that the reason why typography stood out for you compared to other fields of graphic design? Because later on in your career, that a lot of your works is around typography.
Probably. I don't really know. But I guess so. I certainly had no interest in type before that. I did spend 1 year in art school, and I do remember we had some really good lecture series, and we had 3 separate times we had typographers come in and talk about their work. And I remember it being incredibly boring. And I can remember making jokes about it afterwards, like, seeing all these T's on the screen, and I guess that, like one T after another. It's just like we didn't care. And it's like, what is the difference between these stupid T's? or the A's or whatever. So yeah, I had no interest in it beforehand. But I think that when you learn about something in a practical way and I was taught, book typography is very sort of classical, and there are right ways and wrong ways of doing things, and you become a kind of like an expert in that. Then you become opinionated, and yeah, I don't know, the interest grows from there. So yeah, I have to assume that that is what, I have to assume that I probably wouldn't have been interested in drawing letter forms if I hadn't, had that typographic training.
And also in the beginning days of your career, in the not days but years, that you worked with different agencies, and I think in 2003 that you made the decision to quit that type of work and work on your own and more personal projects and like experimental design. I wanted to ask you about that phase. What was it like, and what was the decision behind like quitting that type of work and started working on your own?
Okay, so I mean, I didn't work for different agencies. When me and my friends decided to open a design business, that was it. That's what I did for 10
Okay.
years. So it was our business. We started out just the two of us. She had uh a little bit of design. She also had worked at the same company that I had, but as an editor. And she had a little bit of knowledge in terms of, setting type and stuff like that. But mostly I was the designer and she was the client contact. That was kind of the more or less the split in the beginning, and increasingly the split in the end. And so we had our little two business firm, and then eventually we had enough work that we hired somebody to help out, and it grew from there. At one point, we were 12 people, including ourselves, but some of those people were part time. Um, and that was, the at that point, even though technically I was the designer and she was sort of more the management side, I mean, I did a hell of a lot of management as well. And that's a very different thing. It's when you're just managing people and dealing with guiding other designers through work, and dealing with clients a lot, which I did as well. It's a different job, and it wasn't a job I enjoyed. And uh and I also think, I mean, I think everybody who's in design knows the conflict that occurs between the designer and the client. It's sort of inevitable. I mean, surely, you have times when you have a great relationship with a client, but there are always times when you don't. And it's uh it's very frustrating, and it can be really soul killing, which is what I found it. And with my business partner, we developed an extreme split where my business partner became like, she got her reward from pleasing the client, and I got my reward from doing the design work, and those were often in conflict. So she and I became increasingly in conflict over this, and it actually developed into a split in the studio. And so she and I, we started out as friends. We ended up as very much not friends, and we got to a point where I think we both actively hated each other's guts. And the atmosphere in the office was not good. And that was when I decided, partly because of the breakdown of that relationship, and partly because I at that point felt that I hated graphic design, that I I decided I wanted out, and she miraculously offered to buy me out, and I took it. And so at that point I decided that I wanted to work differently, and I wanted to um I mean I say this often, but like the designer's job is generally speaking, especially in North America, to be in essence egoless. You don't Very few designers develop a style. The vast majority have no style, and they do what's appropriate for the client depending on what the client's needs are. And I wanted to work in a more artistic way, have a style, and have people come to me for that style. But I didn't really have a good sense of exactly what that career would look like. I kind of thought, well, I think it's more like illustration, but I didn't want to be like drawing cats for people. So I had already started developing an interest in ornament and ornamentation, and had done some of that stuff for my company's own promotional things. Um, but it was very vague to me how that was going to manifest itself. So it took a year to kind of sort that out. And I just started, making what I felt were interesting things and sending them out to other designers whose work I admired, or who I thought might
Oh wow,
be.
that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I wanted to ask about that, like the beautiful thing about that story, which is I think there's a lesson for every designer who feel they're stuck in a position or in the company that the creative ideas are not being executed, like their potential is not being used properly. It's after making that decision that that your name starts going around in the design world, in the art world, you become popular. And I wanted to know what was that feeling first, and how was in the beginning days to get your name out there actually, because I think, as I mentioned, there's a lesson for everyone who wants everyone would love to do that. I think I
Right,
actually.
right. Well, I want to put a caveat on that lesson. I mean, it's very popular for people to think, if you do what you love, then it'll work out. And there are millions of people who do what they love and it doesn't work out. And I've seen work of people in illustration or in design who I think are so incredibly good. And I don't understand why. Couldn't understand why I was famous and they weren't. It didn't make sense to me. And I think there's a huge amount of luck there. But one of the pieces of luck that happened to me was that um, shortly before I left my company, I got involved with the design blog Speak Up. And Speak Up was run by Armin Witt. He started it. And it was the first blog about design. And I started by being a commenter on it and became quite obsessed with it. And after a period of about 6 months or a year, Armin invited me to become an author on it, and I always posted under my own name. So, um, and the great thing about that was that because it was the first design blog, it was a new thing. Blogging was like this new exciting thing. There were a lot of like big name graphic designers, uh, at least lurking on the site, if not actually like taking part in the site. And some of those designers were people who I was sending my work out to, and they started to make the connection. Like my name, Marian Bantjes, they'd see it. They go, "Wait a minute, is that the same person who sent me that thing?" Or vice versa. And um, and that gave me I'm I'm a good writer, and I was very opinionated, and they may or may not have agreed with what I was saying, but it gave me an extra dimension, I think, to those people, and and eventually that's how I started to get work. Um, so my first year was pretty terrifying because I didn't get any work at all, and and then the first the first work I got was from Details magazine. Was for oh yeah, yeah. The other thing was there was a T-shirt contest. So Armin Armin had a T-shirt contest for Speak Up, and I had been a designer for 10 years, and I had been involved in the Graphic Designers of Canada, which was very sort of um was quite protectionist in a way, by which I mean, like, they were advocating for accreditation for designers, and it was very strict, like, you don't do free work. And so I had this kind of ethical saying against doing free work, and B, an ego of myself as a designer, like, I don't I don't design T-shirts, I'm not gonna do that. And then I thought, well, it is my community. I was very, very invested in that community. And so I thought, what the hell? I'll design a T-shirt for the community, and it won the T-shirt contest. And that
Oh, nice.
stupid T-shirt that's what got me the details work, and that's what got Rick Valicenti interested in me. And I mean, it was, it's like it's the craziest thing. You just you never know. Um and I think also from that point on I started taking or maybe, yeah, no, from about that I started doing free work for like little like I wouldn't have done it for, anybody who could have paid, but for like little publications, little struggling, like people's little personal pet projects or whatever. Um, just to kind of, I started to view that as free printing. It was basically free printing for me. And so I started doing more of that. But anyway, yeah, so my first job came from Details, and it was just like it was just a relief. Like, just like, oh, thank God. Like, I have work. And um and the amazing thing was it just kind of snowballed after that. It just started coming, and it didn't stop for a long time. And so that was, as I say, first it was a relief. Always a sense of trepidation that I don't know how long this is gonna last. Um and and then eventually, when I became well known, and certainly when I spoke at the AIGA conference. I spoke on the main stage at the AIGA conference, and it was bewildering. It was like, what just happened here? Like, what's going on? You know? It was really strange, because I never aspired to that. I never expected that. I just wanted to make a living. And so I went from wanting to make a living to actually, oh shit, I think I'm going to make a living, to like being well known, and people like fawning all over me. And it was like, it was so weird. It was just, I don't know. It happened so fast. And
And the
it was,
beautiful thing about like your work is that when I look at it, this is a personal comment. It's just that there's this emotional connection. There's this feeling. There's this sensation of human touch. Because a lot of even legendary designs and graphic arts out there, you look at them and you feel like, oh, it's creative, it's wise. The way they solve this problem or the way they show this picture is wise. But your work is more like sentimental for me, at least. Like,
Yeah.
there's this emotion that I feel, and which is very rare to find.
Yeah.
To bring that into these works, that there's on the other side of the table is a client that has a brief, and you to bring the emotion. How did that work in the beginnings, or even till today? Like, bringing that personal touch from your creative point of view compared to what the brief is saying, what the client is asking for.
Um, I think that at that time, um, there was very little work of that nature. I mean, we were still very much in the, what I call the sort of Martha Stewart clean and simple kind of aesthetic. And clean and simple always just keeps coming back. But that's the point we were at. And my interest in ornamentation and excess um and handwork as well um was new. And people just felt like they hadn't seen anything like it before. And um they were drawn to it. And I still think there's a conundrum here that I've never figured out. And that is that, as modernists, we're trained not to like the Baroque, not to like uh frivolity, not to like imperfection, all those kinds of things. And yet people were inexplicably drawn to it. And I think people are inexplicably drawn to it. I think there's something. I don't understand it. I really don't. I don't know what it is. But there's something about it that people intrinsically seem to like, despite perhaps their training or their modernist ideals or whatever. And so that happens. And I think that's what happens, is that people just like, wow, like, this is new, this is interesting, this is, whatever. And I was, one of very few people who was doing this at the time.
Mm.
And the other thing that I was doing was I was not doing it straight up. Like, I was mixing sort of modernism with sometimes, with ornamentation and stuff like that. So I wasn't really interested in recreating what had been done in the past. I was interested in, like, juxtaposing things and moving things forward. And that made things that were traditionally seen as feminine, made them kind of more masculine. So, for instance, like the invocation of black letter and hard edges with curves and stuff like that. So I did have a number of people who contacted me. They contacted me because they wanted something like that, but they wanted that sort of masculine edge. They didn't want pretty, which was totally fine by me, because that's what I was interested in. Um, but then, eventually other people started doing that kind of work. There's a lot of people in the world, and unfortunately that style of work became a style. It became very popular. It became, like, there became, like, digital tools that could kind of just, like, spew out stuff.
Yeah.
And although I could tell the difference between what I was doing, which was very carefully crafted and figured out, and this kind of what I called a vomit of ornamentation, most people couldn't really tell the difference. And so it kind of, like, went through this bubble, became very popular. It was everywhere. People had, like, bits and pieces of crap flying all over the place everywhere. And then it went out of style. And I also had my own agenda, my own I had a realization early on that I could be the girl who does type with like swirly stuff. And because that was initially sort of what I was doing. And I didn't want to do that. I was interested in other things. I was interested in patterns. I was interested in um as I say, I was interested in those juxtapositions. I was interested in pushing everything further. And I found that the clients that I had had and the new clients that I got were okay with that up to a point, and then they weren't. And I had people just, saying, what we really they really wanted me to do what I'd done before. They really wanted
Huh.
some swirly type. And I didn't want to do that. And so there was a bit of self-sabotage there in terms of I just knew that I would be unhappy if I had to just do that over and over again. It wouldn't be, as you say, from the heart. It would just be rote, you know? And I wanted to keep developing and moving, and I was arrogant enough to think that people would follow me, and they didn't. So my practice did actually kind of, slowly fade away.
Hey everyone, Sajjad here. First of all, thank you for listening to the podcast. I wanted to quickly let you know about our merch drops. Right now, I'm wearing one of our designs, which I really like, which is about when designers end up doing everything from design to copy to video and even social media. Our merch store is full of cool designs, specially made for graphic designers to wear. So make sure you check out our merch store. Also, our website is up. ToozeStudio.com is live. Our website now has the complete archive of Tooze Studio videos, Tooze Talks episodes, and exclusive interviews and articles only available on ToozeStudio.com. So make sure you check out our new website. And finally, if you want to support us and you like what we are making and you want to actually help us to be able to create more content like this, you can join Tooze Studio on our Patreon account. You can also get discounts on our merch by joining our Patreon account. Now back to the episode. One thing about your work is that going with different materials, using different materials. For example, the famous sugar typography for Stefan Sagmeister, your work with pasta, and these are like really interesting choice of materials. Why did you come to the conclusion that you have to use sugar, for example, or pasta for this kind of was it based on this project or something experimental that you were trying to achieve with these different materials?
Well, I can tell you where the pasta thing came from. And that was that I had an article done about me in Creative Arts magazine, and I think the word they wanted me to make was creativity. It was either creative or creativity, something like that. And that's like a really uh that's a difficult word to do because because it means like if you're gonna do that in a custom way, it better actually be creative, you know? Like I can't describe it. It's like it's got a lot of pressure on it. And I also, I also didn't like the word. And so in the end, I decided to kind of take the piss out of the word creativity by making it in macaroni, which is like this really lowbrow thing. And it's something that we did when we were in kindergarten. You use macaroni and lentils and stuff like that. And so I was making fun of the word creativity, and trying to lower its je ne sais quoi. It's it's expectation. The word creativity has a lot of expectation, and I was kind of, yeah. So I did it in like the most mundane thing that I could think of. And then, I liked it. And I thought, actually working with pasta is a really good idea. And so that's where that came from. And I also just I mean, I do play with my food, and the sugar thing came from, I mean, I have cereal every morning and I sprinkle sugar on it and sugar ends up on the table and I play with that sugar and I have ever since I was a kid. And, when it occurred to me one time playing with the sugar, hey, I should, I could make words out of this. I could make letter forms. I could make something out of this. And then I did make something out of that, and Stefan saw that, and then he wanted something, also made out of sugar for his thing, which I then sort of like took to the next level of playing with sugar. But yeah, I mean, I get ideas from materials and things everywhere, and I'm always I'm always picking stuff up and saving it because, I might need it someday for some, some project. So I have to be careful not to become too much of a pack rat, but yeah, you can make stuff out of all sorts of things, and
From tomorrow, I'm like looking at everything.
yeah,
Just overdoing it. Like every food
yeah.
that I eat, I'm trying to make an A out of it.
Yeah,
But you have two amazing, gorgeous books, I Wonder and Pretty Pictures.
yeah.
And was it something that you decided to do as something, a personal, completely personal project, or was there a demand for it? Because being your own client, basically, how did it feel? Because personally, collecting a normal PDF portfolio is hell sometimes because
Yeah,
to which
yeah.
one to choose and which one, and to create this amazing, beautifully curated books. How was it, and what was the reason for its creation?
Um, so I Wonder was the first book, and that came from Princeton Architectural Press had at some point asked me to do a book of some kind, but they weren't really clear on what they wanted me to do. And I came back to them with a vague idea, but we sort of had a long back and forth that the whole thing was too vague, and I couldn't get my head around it, and so that kind of fell apart. And then Timpson Hudson contacted me and wanted me to do a monograph, and I really felt that it was too soon for a monograph. But I told him that I had this other idea, and this idea was the evolution of what had happened with Princeton Architectural Press. And so I knew I wanted to do something that was fully ornamented throughout. Um, and that and I wanted to use the essays that I'd written for Speak Up, as well as add some new essays. And I wanted to create a kind of a symbiosis of text and image, where the ornament is not the ornament informs the text, and the text informs the ornament, and they're not the same without the other. And I was largely successful in that. I was very, very happy with I Wonder. And amazingly, Thames Hudson went for it, yeah, I mean, doing that one was hard because I had a lot of writing to do, and and keeping the writing under control was difficult. But the illustrative or the ornamental part of it was relatively easy and super, super, super fun. Um, so I mean, I actually really like being my own client. I know that a lot of designers are intimidated by that. They like to have a brief, they like to have restrictions, and I like no restrictions. And that was a no restrictions project. And then a couple of years after that, uh, I decided that I was ready for the monograph with Thames and Hudson. And so that curation thing is something that, especially if you have a small amount of space that if you've got something small that you're trying to send out, it is hard to decide which ones and which ones to include and how to present it and so on and so forth. Um, so for that reason, I decided to include everything. And I decided to do it chronologically. So that eliminated the decision about what to include, and it eliminated sort of like, how do I structure this? Like, should I put all these kinds of things together and all those kinds of, no, just do it chronologically. And so that kind of gave me a natural um well, it gave me an order for the book, right? So I've got beginning to end. And then after that, when I wanted to do I wanted it to be instructive. I actually designed it with students in mind. But unfortunately, it ended up being very expensive, so students couldn't really afford it. But that I did it is very instructive about, what I was thinking and how I was working and what I was doing. And so I included sketches and, early failed processes and things like that. And then I wanted it to be it had it had a basic structure. It had margins, it had place for folios, uh it had a rigorous type type size and styles for different things, but the rest of it was quite free form. So I designed each spread like it was a poster. So each spread is different. There's no grid within that, it's not like the images go here and here. It was, and I could make them different sizes, and depending on, how important or how interesting or how much material I had for that project. And then size things and align things so that they create pleasing alignments between each of them and between the opposing page. So I designed it and wrote it at the same time. And that's pretty much, I think, the only way I could have done that. And that's, of course, the benefit of being able to write and, uh, being able to write as well as design, because, you could, well, this is fitting properly, so I'll just, shorten this paragraph, or, oh, I need to write a little bit more, or, that kind of thing. And yeah, it went very smoothly, and I was, super happy with the outcome of that as well.
It's
Yeah.
really coming together everything from like the experience of writing in the beginning days and then the illustration, the typography, everything came together, I think, for this project. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, yeah. I do too.
Also, uh, in more recent time, it's mentioned on your website as well that you've experienced with AI as well. I wanted to
Yeah.
know what was it, this interaction. The beautiful thing about this is that this artist, that her work is really personal, experimental, has this emotional aspect to it, and on the other side is this machine. So I wanted
Yeah.
to know how is the experience for you? Are you still continuing working with AI? What is the experience like? And do you see a foreseeing future for like the whole design field in this collaboration with this machine?
I started with AI. I mean, the work that I've done with AI, with the exception of one commissioned piece of work, the work that I've done with AI is is my art. It's personal projects, as we say in the design industry. But um, and it came out of well, okay. So there's an evolution. So remember, I talked about the macaroni and and how that's sort of what I call the elevation of the mundane, of taking these mundane materials that we have around us all the time. And I might have to stop my dog from barking at some point, but anyway, yeah.
It's a great sound effect. It's a lovely sound effect.
Up to a point, I think. But um uh and so that is something that I've been interested in sort of all along is that use of everyday materials. And out of that I started making what I call sticker paintings. So I started using mass produced stickers. A lot of them are vintage, which I buy on eBay, and I use those to make these complex arrangements that are, in the end, art. And um, and I'm very fussy that they have to be like the mass-produced sort of generic kind. Like I won't use if I can kind of see the artist's hand in the, like if like illustrators make stickers and whatnot. I won't use those. Um, so when I first started playing with AI, and I did that at the prompting of Jonathan Heffler, the type designer who's a friend of mine, and he was playing with AI, and he said, "You got to try this out. This is amazing." And at first, I really wasn't interested. I think it took me about 4 months before I actually tried it, and and I started with it mostly because I decided that it was starting to become kind of buzzy. People were talking about it, and I wanted to write something about it. But I thought, well, before I write anything about it, I better use it. And I started using it, and I was just immediately hooked. And um, just started making like these weird creatures and stuff. Like it was its ability to, at that time, to like one of my first generations was my prompt was lemon camel, and it made me these amalgamations of camels and lemons that were just like so crazy, and it would do them over and over again, and they were all different. It was amazing to me. And then um and then at some point I realized, just through playing with it, that I could regenerate the same image and it would make the same thing again, only a little bit different. And so I could make many, many multiples of the same thing, and each one would be slightly different, but also the same. And that was like, oh my God, because one of my interests in patterning that I've always went, that this goes way back to the 90s, is patterns that change as they go. Either they change in
Yeah.
color or the shapes change or something about them changes, so they're not like just a static pattern. And that was when I realized, like, oh my God, these are like my new stickers. I can use these in multiples, but they look the same, but they're not the same. And that was so exciting to me. And so that's when I started making like the vase things with the with the objects. And I generated thousands and thousands of objects. Um
The
which I
vast
just
series is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I really, really love the vase series. Um I have a lot more, tucked away on my computer. I would just make these things and then save them, and then I would, okay, so which one am I going to use? Which one am I going to use to make the next vase? Um, and meanwhile, the AI was changing, and I noticed that it was becoming uh more realistic and more literal.
Yes.
And to the point, and I would test it every now and then, with some of my old prompts and stuff. And, it got to the point where if I typed in lemon camel, it would give me a lemon and a camel.
Oh,
At the best, it might give me a camel carrying lemons, but it really became much less imaginative. And that's the
yeah,
crazy thing about the early version of it was it's a machine. And the last thing a machine is supposed to be is imaginative, but it was incredibly imaginative.
yeah,
And that was just like it was so wild. And I don't think it has that anymore. I really
yeah.
don't. So I've stopped using it actually. I don't I just the last a few months ago, maybe it was the last time I used it, and I was just boring. It was like it just wouldn't give me interesting things. It would just give me normal things. Very realistic normal things, but that's not what I wanted. And so I have my big stash of AI generated images, and I am going to make some more of the big vast things. Although maybe some smaller ones. The size of those has become a bit problematic, especially in terms of framing and stuff. Um, they're 44 by 50, and framing them costs a fortune. And um, shrinking them down, I could shrink them down a little bit, but not much because they are so detailed. And that's the other great thing about them is like you get this image and there's so much detail in
Yeah,
it. It's
yeah,
incredible. Um and yeah, and I got over the size thing. Like if you enlarge them, obviously they lose their even when you enlarge them using AI things, they just become weird. But just to collect a whole bunch of those little things, then you get the big thing with all that detail. It's great. So yeah, and then in terms of design and AI, I mean, I hear that people are using AI for design, but I don't understand how. I mean, I understand making images with it and using that in design, but I don't know. I mean, I know that it can like I'm sure it can generate like the front of a brochure or something, and you could swap out the image. I'm
yeah.
not really sure, but I just find that so weird. It's so stupid, so counter. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me at all why anybody would do that. Partly
But
because
your
I know
way
I
of
could.
looking at AI is so cool. Like it's so unique that you are looking at the beginning days that it was further away from reality. Because today every AI new trailer or new teaser is about how close is it to reality. But you're
Right,
actually looking at the imaginative part of it in the beginning
right,
days where it was like surreal scenery. That's
yeah.
such a unique look at the AI. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's that. I mean, I'm not sure. I did talk to another person who had used it, and when we had a long conversation about it, and we both agreed that it was that weirdness was what attracted us to it. And I'm so glad I used it at that time, and I'm so glad I collected all those images. But I did have a sense that it was going to change. It's just I could see where it was going, and yeah, so I did as much as I could at when I could, but yeah,
That's amazing. And
yeah.
one last question I wanted to ask that we ask all of our guests is that if you had to select top three, top four, top five, how many you want, of the most influential either designers, artists that you felt that they were really laid the foundation for your way of your thinking, looking at design, or in general, you just like their works.
Well, that's too hard. I mean, there's hundreds of them, but I can probably only then my brain is gonna seize up. Okay, well, there's an artist called Fred Tomaselli. I think it's Tomaselli. Pretty sure. Um, and he a lot of the work that he's done is collage work. And I saw a piece of his a long, long time ago called Bird Blast. And he had these images of birds that he had cut out. And I think he cut the wings off. So it was just like the sort of torpedo bird shape. And then it was arranged and then it was arranged in this big circle and all going out, like that, and these birds just like this. It was so fantastic. And that I would say that was influential to me, and also a piece that I loved, and I continue to love most of his work. There's a lot of artists whose work I adore. There's too many to name, but I would say that one was influential. All all Islamic work, especially from I think it's the 17th century, it's either the 14th or the 17th, I can't remember, but anyway, is highly influential for me. I think that they've got it all. There's the incredible calligraphy, the patterning, the calligraphy combined with the patterning. And then on top of that, they've got a really fantastic sense uh, of layout, of page layout. So if
Yes.
you look at the old Persian manuscripts and the way they've got like an image and the text, and I mean, it always varies, but it's genius. It's
Yes.
so good.
I grew up on
And
that because I'm originally from Iran. So the Persian
oh,
miniature, yeah, yeah, the
yes,
storytelling, the way of this many different stories in this 2D frame with the layout design, with the calligraphy, with the
yeah,
illustration and painting. As I completely understand what you're saying.
it is. Yeah, it's just. I mean, it blows my mind. It's so good. And yeah, I mean, the Iranian. That is the. I think the best of the best is from the Iranian
My
region.
smile is going like,
I've never been to Iran. I mean, I would love to go and go to a museum there and see some of that stuff. I mean, I've seen some of it in France, in person, like the real thing in France, in at the Met, various places. But then I of course have books, but I'd love to. But of course, you can never really. Like, it'd be so great to just, like, sit down with one of those big books and look through
yeah,
everything, like, look
yeah,
through every page,
exactly.
or you can't do that. But, anyway, so there's that. That's a huge influence on me. Uh, also the modernist poster designers, from what would they be? Uh Well, all the big names in the super modern design. And I'm drawing a blank. This is what happens, is my brain just goes blank. I can't think of any
Oh, all
names.
the like Milton Glazers, Herb Llewellyns, those type of.
Pre-Milton. So
Huh.
like the Germans, the Swiss mostly, But
Mule
anyway, so
Brockman.
yeah, Muley Brockman. That's
Yeah,
the one I was thinking of.
yeah, yeah.
So that wonderful rigidity and a visual alignment. I love that stuff. And then of course Art Nouveau. Alphonse Mucha was a like a childhood influence. My mother had an Alphonse Mucha poster on her wall that I looked at since I was a little
That's
kid.
magnificent. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Just I mean, yeah. No, there's so many. Um. Yeah, and a couple of contemporary people that necessarily influences, but whose work I really love. Martin Vanesky, out of San Francisco. Well, actually, he's moved. I'm not sure where he's at Cranbrook right now. He went back to school, but anyway. And Nancy Skolas, from where is she at? Rhode Island. RISD. She's at RISD, I think. Pretty sure. They are, they're contemporary designers, who I just think they're incredible.
Amazing.
And then there's a whole bunch of European ones, but my brain is drawing
No,
a
I
bit of
think
a
you gave us like amazing list of different styles and designers and contemporary artists actually. And you are one of our sources in inspiration for me, for
Oh,
our
thank you.
listeners. And thank you for coming to our program again. I want to say it's been a pleasure listening to the stories of your amazing career and the suggestions and the ideas that you have for the next generations of designers and artists. Thank you again for coming here.
Okay, thank you very much.